Let me start from the special guest I have in the studio, His Excellency Peter Ryan, Ambassador of Ireland to Nigeria. He's also the designate to Togo, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, as well as ECOWAS. I hope I have that all sorted. Welcome to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Nancy. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's not all the time I have, excellencies with me, so it's so nice to have you.
Thank you.
All right, and joining us virtually is Dr. Robert Floyd. He's the head International Engagement Technological University of Dublin. He joins us from Ireland. Dr. Floyd, good to see you and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Nancy.
Fantastic. Now, Your Excellency, let me begin with you. Since your arrival into the country, what have you been up to? You came in January?
Yeah, I came. Well, I came just
January this year?
Yeah, I came at the end of last year, and I presented my credentials
Just to President
Buhari in January, actually on my wife's birthday.
Oh.
So it's a very,
So very
It's a day
memorable.
I won't forget. Very memorable day.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was fantastic. And really, I've been just trying to understand a little bit more about Nigeria and get to know people here and spend a little time connecting with the Irish community here. We have a small but pretty well established community here. We have a long history, as you know, in this country. It's hard to find a part of Nigeria where the Irish have not lived and worked and built schools and built hospitals and built businesses and contributed to the development of this country. So we're very fortunate to have those very, very deep roots here. And some extraordinary things. Our Prime Minister travelled here for the Declaration of Independence at the establishment of Nigeria as a modern state, as an independent state, which is a special day for you, but also for Ireland as a country that itself had a post-colonial independence journey. And there's a very funny story that he was hosted for a garden party at St. Gregory's School in Lagos. And the priest who hosted that was a father called Father Dennis Slattery, who very famously was the president of the Nigerian Soccer Association. So I thought of him when I saw all the awards for the Nigerian soccer players at the African Football Federation. But he asked, our Prime Minister said to him, how many people will come to the reception? And he said, 1,500 people. 1,000 people will be Irish missionaries who are living and working in Nigeria who will come to meet you, and 500 will be members of the Irish community who are working in business and so on. And the Prime Minister said, well, that's absolutely wonderful. And the priest said to him, if you wanted 15,000, we could get 15,000. Such was the depth of the Irish influence and activity here at that time, particularly in the medical and education fields. It's really an extraordinary contribution to have made to the development and partnership with the Nigerian people, and we're very proud of it. I'm very lucky that I get to meet people whose lives have been impacted by Irish people, reaching right back, indeed, to the 19th century. It's very special.
Okay, Your Excellency, you said a few things. Dr. Floyd, I'll come to you in a bit, but let me dwell with you a bit. I'm interested to really know what you have realized about the country since your arrival. That's one, and you've also said quite a few things. You've been connecting with people. I'd also like to know if you have an idea of what number, how many Irish citizens are in Nigeria, if you can give me an idea, a rough estimate of how many Irish citizens are here before we'll get into the business facts later.
Yeah, we probably have less than a couple of hundred full-time Irish citizens, Irish-born citizens living here. Now, we've quite a few Irish citizens because we've been very fortunate that we've had quite a few Nigerians have come over the years, acquired Irish citizenship, and are now based back here. And I'm very fortunate. Almost every day I get to meet somebody who's got family in Ireland, and it's a very positive and dynamic relationship. And it's something that I think we should celebrate. We should celebrate more. It's something that I try and celebrate every day in my work and in building those connections and really modernising the relationship as a small, dynamic member of the European Union, which itself has been committed to democracy for 100 years. Our journey to independence, and then our journey to economic independence, and as a small, open trading economy, I think is an interesting one. And I think there's so much scope to build our political, economic, cultural, and our people-to-people links. And I think education is at the heart of that. Because if you want to understand Ireland's development and Ireland's, I suppose, commitment to managing our own future, education is at the heart of it. And if you look at what our missionaries, the first thing they did when they came here was to provide education and give that opportunity to so many generations of Nigerians. And I think that's why the Dr. Flood's organisation and Dr. Flood's commitment to that is so important, because it's a very modern, tangible way to celebrate the legacy that we inherited here, but also to build for the future. You guys have got the youngest one of the youngest populations in the world.
Yeah.
Ireland has the youngest population in the European Union. So of all the member states of the European Union, Ireland is the one with the youngest population, and we're the ones with that education history. So we're a very good fit in that respect. And I think there's a lot we can learn from Nigeria, certainly, and maybe there's some lessons we can share from our journey also.
Okay, I'll come back to the lessons we can actually learn from each other, but let me come over to Dr. Floyd, and let me take it from the angle which His Excellency has ended with, talking about education. Just like he mentioned, Ireland has the youngest population in the EU. Of course, Nigeria is a youthful country. The median age of Nigeria is 18 years, actually. And I also do know that Ireland, of course, has been ranked first globally on the IMD 2023 World Competitiveness Yearbook. So you have a lot of stuff around education. Ireland has the highest number of STEM graduates per capita in the EU. When I saw that, I was really so interested and curious. That's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That's what STEMs mean. So, Dr. Floyd, can you speak to me about why education is that important, especially in Ireland, just as His Excellency has mentioned, that is actually a bedrock. Why is it actually so important, and why is Ireland really almost at the forefront of everything education in the EU, one of the largest cohorts of graduates on the planet, 60% plus? How did you all get here?
It's been a long story and a long journey, to be fair. I think probably one of the key reasons we have such a huge higher education graduates every year is that successive governments, regardless of whether the country was in recession or in expansion, maintained a high level of investment in education at all levels, from elementary to high school right through to higher education. I think one of the other key benefits or key reasons why it plays such an important part is that we don't treat education purely as an end in itself. It's viewed as playing a key role in economic development. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why we have the figures that you were quoting there. The role of universities is not just to educate people for the sake of educating them. It's for educating people to contribute to the economy, for businesses to engage with universities for their research, to engage with universities and higher education institutions to develop staff with the correct skills that they need. This has been done in a number of different ways, like there's obviously bilateral interactions between universities and individual companies or industries, but it's also done on a national level through a future skills need reports that were done by government departments and agencies over the years. The rationale for doing that is to look at what were the future skills. For example, one of the ones I was involved with many years ago is in the area of engineering education. It was engaging with industry and all of the stakeholders to look at in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years time, what are the particular skills that the engineering industry was going to need, and the universities were brought in then to look to redevelop and change their curriculum to address those future needs, not just for the here and now.
Okay, Dr. Ford, let me still stick with you, because I also know that you served at the request of the Irish Minister of Education and Skills on High Level Group on International Education. You served as a member of Irish Universities Association of International Directors Group. And under your leadership, the Technological University of Dublin, founded in 1887, currently with about 30,000 students, hosts more than 1,000 international students. So you've had dynamic partnerships, of course, with higher education institutions around the world. What would you say about Nigerians seeking higher education, especially in Ireland? Because I know that many Nigerians are also in Ireland. What have been your experiences with international students, especially those from Nigeria? And perhaps you can also give me an idea where where actually they are interested studying in, because of course uh, Ireland has the highest number of STEM graduates per capita in the EU. So I'm actually wondering if Nigerians studying in Ireland are also interested in STEM education, or they're interested in something else. Yes, because we are trying, our government is trying to increase STEM education in Nigeria, even taking a look at even women. We've seen a lot of women drop by the wayside in terms of STEM education. So I really like to speak about that too. I saw His
Well,
Excellency, doing like this when, so perhaps, I don't know if I'm speaking your mind, but I'll come back to you in a bit.
well, ironically, the majority of Nigerian students that come to study from Nigeria to TU Dublin actually come to study business programs, but
You see
probably
why I
about
asked? You see? That's why.
yeah, yeah. But to be fair, about 30% of them would come to study subjects like, say, business analytics, which would actually be a computing program, or something in the area of computer science, data analytics, cybersecurity, etc. So it's probably 30% business, 30% computing, and then the others across a range of different areas. Um, what I would say as well is that we have a very significant portion of the Nigerian community that has chosen to move to Ireland, actually study in TU Dublin. And a very large proportion of them would be studying in the science and engineering areas. So it's not all bad news, it's good news. And so we do see an awful lot of the ethnically Nigerians, if that's the correct term to use, who choose to study science and engineering subjects.
Okay, Excellency, do you want to say anything about that? Because I saw you penciling some things down.
Yeah, I just want to say, and thanks, Dr. Flood, it's good to see you on there, looking well. Um, I think the effort to increase the participation of females in STEM is an ongoing. It's not a once-off kind of initiative that we do. I think we have to use it right across our primary and our higher level education systems. And also, we know about creating champions and about people seeing pathways for themselves. And I think one of the initiatives that's happened in Ireland with the Nigerian community there and the Nigerian diaspora and then the young Irish people of Nigerian heritage is that we have started to see the identification and the promotion of champions in that community. People who say, I've come through that, because all of us want to see somebody with whom we can relate and with whom we can aspire to, and who can help us to reach down with the ladder to help us to climb to the heights that they've achieved. And I think one of the things that really strikes me is the potential for enhancing real people-to-people collaboration, building on the success of Nigerian students in Ireland and building on the home from home that they find in Ireland, and the opportunity, the openness that there is there, and the meritocratic basis of society there, that people can get ahead, but also that they can keep an eye behind them to help other people on the same pathway. I think that's very important.
Because I was actually wondering what could be the attraction for Nigerians to really go to Ireland,
Yeah,
apart from even education, or even the
yeah,
education. That was why I asked Dr. Floyd
yeah,
earlier, what areas of education do they really study
yeah,
over there? Because I would like to know what's actually in the minds of those Nigerians
yeah,
that are going there. So I would like you also to speak about that. Then number two is
yeah.
around, since you've arrived, what has been Nigerian government relationship with the Irish government? We're talking about education now. Is our government seeing that perhaps as an opportunity? That's one. Then can we also gain mutually, because we're talking now, if Nigerian students are going to Ireland to school, that's also capital flight.
Yep.
That's also spending euros, spending money. What are we getting in return? So I'd like you to speak about that.
Yeah, your fantastic questions. The first one is, the Nigerians are very like the Irish. You know, the word of mouth and the recommendation of friends is 100 times more important than all the work that well respected, long established universities and professionals can do. I think when we trust people and when we build relationships, our recommendation is our bond to people. And I think that's what we're seeing with the Nigerian community in Ireland. People are recommending Ireland as a destination to their friends and family and their classmates and their fellow alumni and their wider networks back in Nigeria. And we're going to see more of that as Nigerians and Irish people of Nigerian heritage begin to make more of a market in our society. And I mean, in every part of our society, your counterparts, for example, in Irish media now, for the first time, are people of Nigerian heritage. We have many of them featured in that little book called The Black and Irish, a wonderful publication which is kind of swept like wildfire across Ireland, winning awards, profile on television, profile on radio, profile on social media. And we're seeing people become champions of their community and always looking back to see how they can connect and support their families and friends back here. That's something we share together because our country has a history of immigration, as you know. We have 8 million people on the island of Ireland, and we have 70 million people of Irish heritage around the world. So we have 10 times more people outside of Ireland than we have in Ireland. We talk to our diaspora all the time. This is how we figure out how to navigate pretty complicated environment in which we all live. Our first port of call is our diaspora. And it's a wonderful gift for us now that we have this really dynamic Nigerian diaspora in Ireland. Which brings me to the second point. Yesterday I was fortunate enough to meet the Foreign Minister, His Excellency Tugger, at the ministry, and he launched, together with the members of Diplomatic Corps, and he launched the Tinubu doctrine of the 4Ds. The 4Ds being democracy, diaspora, development and demography. And if you think about it, on each of those four things, Ireland and Nigeria share something. We've been a democracy, an unbroken democracy, since we won our independence. Extraordinary. When you think of all the things that happened in the world in the last 100 years, a lot of them in Europe, Ireland managed to retain its democratic status. We're committed to it, and we're committed to supporting it around the world. If you think on diaspora, again, it's something that we really share.
We have so many in the diaspora.
I met your diaspora commissioner at that event, Mrs. DeBeery, last night, and she said, Peter, we're going to do this thing in Ireland in April. We're going to have a diaspora conference in Ireland, and a diaspora investment summit hosted by members of the Nigerian diaspora there, who are proudly Irish citizens supporting our community in Ireland, but also not forgetting their home place and seeing what connections they can make. On the demographic side, I need to tell you, you guys are the largest and youngest population in Africa. We have the youngest population in Europe, and although we're a very small country, as I say, of less than 8 million people, we are a member of the European Union. We've a seat at that table. We're very active at the United Nations level. We're very active in global actions such as at COP28 that you were speaking about earlier on. Our minister is one of the representatives of the European Union in that negotiation as we speak now. And then in terms of development, I think if you think about where Ireland has travelled from being one of the poorest countries in the world 100 years ago, from being almost an entirely agriculture-based economy, to this year being, for the first time, an economy where our services exports exceeded our goods exports. So we've travelled a little bit of a distance. We have some lessons, I think, under those, and I think your government is very aware of them. We were fortunate, our agriculture minister came and led a trade mission here in September. And much of that trade, the focus of that trade mission was about what learnings have we got from our agri-food sector, what learnings have we got from our education sector, our technology sector, our business sectors, our value chain development businesses. what lessons have we got, and what partnerships can we build to not just to support Nigerians in Nigeria, and there are many Nigerians employed by Irish firms here, but also we know our way around the European Union a little bit. So we are the location of choice for most of the global technology companies, pharmaceutical companies in Europe. And why would we not be the location of choice for Nigerian companies looking to do business in Europe?
I'll come back to that. Why perhaps the opportunities for Nigerian companies also being in Ireland and not just about Irish companies coming here
Exactly.
to set up. But Dr. Floyd, let me come back to you and ask you about perhaps what opportunities do you believe there might be to enhancing Nigerian Irish partnerships, especially in education, especially in training and perhaps reskilling. That's one. The second question is, you've actually been also in the university system. Are you seeing partnerships around Nigerian universities with Irish universities? I'm actually so interested, especially in STEM education, because it's been dwindling in Nigeria. And we have old universities also here in Nigeria. Are we seeing that camaraderie between Nigerian universities and universities in Dublin, especially as you're really so grounded in STEM education?
Well, just on the second question first, there has been a significant acceleration since His Excellency arrived in Nigeria. He's a particularly dynamic ambassador. So there, those negotiations are beginning and are underway at the moment, not just within TU Dublin, but with a number of other universities to look at ways we can. And the partnerships are more about collaboration because I really don't like when people say to learn from us. It actually has to be a two-way process that we're learning and the partners are learning as well. Coming back to the piece around the reskilling, I think one of the key things about reskilling, and I would have seen this in many different countries where we have been approached to look at help, say, reskilling people for one particular industry or other, and they want to learn what we did and import that to their country. My view on that is that the key way that a reskilling exercise is going to actually be successful when you're working with higher education is to learn what we have done, and but the key piece to it then is to localize that for the particular circumstances in the geography that's actually going to be taking place in, because you just can't import a model from Ireland, France, Germany, the UK, USA, whatever, and dump it into Nigeria. It
Exactly.
won't work that way.
Yeah. So we should, of course, I always say on the program here that some will say international models, but perhaps sometimes we also need to Nigerianize
Yes.
those international models, because if it works 100% in Ireland does not mean it will really work verbatim 100% in Nigeria, because we have our own values. We're also
Yes.
different people. You know, we do things differently from other countries. So I like that you also brought that out. You mentioned earlier that education is really a bedrock for economic success and economic development. And I like that point which you brought up, because I always also say on the program, a nation cannot move beyond the intellectualism of its people. And for you to be intellectual, you know, educate, you have to, it has to come from education, either formal or formal and informal, you know, even semi-formal, all of them are together. I would like to know, even apart from the formal education that we're talking about, are there things that we can actually, you know, you said earlier on there is a partnership. Are there things that we can actually partner around, perhaps vocational education? Because I was speaking with the Minister of Education a few weeks back, and I also did ask him about our school curriculum, for example, Nigeria school curriculum. He actually also mentioned they're looking into that, also looking into vocational education. So I don't know if Ireland has also that type of education, and if you would like to speak about that.
Oh, Ireland absolutely has a
Oh,
vocational
okay.
education, and the technological universities in particular were established because we have the history of, in fact, TU Dublin, when it was established in a different form back in 1887, it actually specialised in vocational education, and over the years we developed that and expanded that. Um, so Our vocational education, absolutely, that has been in our DNA for over 100 years, probably 140 years, and I'd argue that we would be definitely experts on that. Coming back to the point about what localizing, I think that is absolutely and utterly the key piece. So again, if you were to look at the model that we have here for vocational education, it works here and it works well. And the government indeed here is putting a huge investment in that. Maybe His Excellency might be able to speak a little bit more to that, because we value the vocational education, and it's a huge contributor to the economy, both from the creation of jobs in regional areas, etc. Um, Looking at the role of higher education, particularly in economic development, the way the technological universities and indeed the other universities were set up by statute, by an act of the Irish Parliament, they actually have a legal responsibility to contribute to economic development in the region. And coming back to your point there about the value of education in all its forms, under the Irish system, we have a system called recognition of prior learning. So somebody can actually come to university who doesn't actually have a formal qualification in the subject, but they may have, for example, I'll go back to engineering, they may have been working in the engineering industry for years and years and years, and they've acquired a lot of informal education. We have a system whereby you can codify that knowledge and say that's equivalent to an ordinary degree, an honours degree, whatever it might actually be. The benefit of that is it allows people to interact with education at different points in their life. So somebody can, for economic reasons, didn't have the opportunity to go to university
Exactly.
when they finished
Yeah.
high school. They can work for several years. They can then re-engage with education, formal education at a later stage in life when it's relevant, when they have the means, the time, the opportunity, etc., to do so. And that again, we have a system which we call lifelong learning that allows people to engage with education at any stage. One of the other things that we do in the technological universities is we call it a ladder of opportunity, whereby somebody can come in at the lowest formal level of higher education, which would be at the vocational level. They can complete their studies in that, and step by step, they can work their way through to higher levels of education. And I'd always give the example of one guy that came into us about 25 years ago to become through the vocational system to become an electrician. He completed his studies as an electrician. He then came a few years later and studied for his honours degree, his master's, and eventually got his PhD in electrical engineering.
Okay, Your Excellency. Let me move over to another issue. I will come back to Dr. Floyd with some educational issues later. But from what you had said earlier, I'm interested to know, like, how many Irish companies are here in Nigeria? Because I also do know that we have more Irish exports into Nigeria than exports from Nigeria to Ireland. What is the kind of work going on there in terms of having more Nigerians even set up businesses there, or more Nigerian products also move to Ireland, since there's also a Nigerian diaspora or an Irish diaspora community there of Nigerian descent. So I would like to know that, and what you are doing to be able to close that gap, because that gap is huge. I also do know that Irish spirits, I don't want to mention names. Irish spirits are also being exported here for those that take spirits, whiskey, and all of that, and is increased by over 200% into Nigeria. So I'd like to know what specific markets, what areas of businesses have you been engaging with? What kind of conversations have you been having with Team Ireland and Team Nigeria so that the gap can be closed? You also mentioned earlier about agriculture. Ireland has advantage in agriculture. Of course, we're an agrarian society. Even though we're saying that our farmers are getting old, we also need to infuse technology. We need to get young people to farm. So what are the things that we can actually learn from each other in terms of agriculture? That's third. Fourth question, sorry, I just need to say it as it's coming. The fourth question is around services. You mentioned that services now outweigh other sectors in your own country. That, of course, is also reflecting in Nigeria because our own GDP, over 50% is services. But we're also looking at how do we really harness that component of GDP? So I would like to hear from you. So fire on,
Thank
Excellency.
you. I'll try to work my way through those four questions. Thank you. On the first one, um, one of the really welcome initiatives that's happened during the Minister of Agriculture's visit in September was the launch of Friends of Ireland in Nigeria, and that's our first time to have an organisation here, a network, if you like, in Nigeria of Irish people who are based here and people who have a connection with Ireland, whether that's a family, whether that's business, whether that's a cultural interest, whether it's a sporting interest, whatever the interest might be, whether you're an alumnus of an Irish university. So Friends of Ireland Nigeria, headed by Alestina out of Lagos, and they've been busy doing things already. And they're going to start connecting people across every walk of life between Ireland and Nigeria. Because in the past, when we had our very large community here of missionaries, what we didn't have was a very dynamic Nigerian community in Ireland. So therefore we had to put a new type of way of engaging in place, and that's going to be a very important partner with Team Ireland for everything that we do. So we have our food promotion people here, Board BIA they're called, which means the food board in the Irish language, and they're based in Lagos. And we have a representative also of Enterprise Ireland, which is our trade and technology export promotion board. Both of those organisations, partnership's a big word for them. So they're constantly trying to find partners here for Irish companies who want to do something in the region. So it's never just a simple export situation. Many of our companies that come here set up companies in Nigeria, employ people here, and contribute to the Nigerian economy and as Nigeria develops. Irish Spirit's a really interesting story. It's a story close to our hearts because it's an entrepreneurial story almost without parallel. Ireland produced about 80% of the world's whiskey in the 1800s. 80% of all the whiskey in the world was produced in Ireland in the 1800s. Because of a variety of factors, not least because of our independence from Britain, our share of the world whiskey market declined to the extent we only had 4 whiskey distilleries when I was born. There was only 4 left on the island of Ireland. Now we're back to 40, and in the interim, Irish whiskey has become the fastest growing spirit category of all spirit categories in the world. Now for us, that's a recovery. We're going back to where we were 200 years ago, and because of our independence and other reasons, because we didn't have a navy to protect our exports, because our big neighbour next door really pushed and supported them. And we're not displacing others, we're creating new markets for ourselves. So it's a real entrepreneurship comeback story. You'd love the people involved in it. They are really, really representing the best, I suppose, of the Irish economy and entrepreneurial spirit. And I think in the agri-food, we now produce enough people, we produce enough food every year to feed 40 million people. That's from a country that 170 years ago had a devastating famine when we lost 1/4, 25% of our population.
What is your major produce, food products?
So in food, we will be very strong in milk powder, for example, in dairy products, in beef products, in other meat products. We will be very strong in ingredient products. So you'll be very hard pressed to find lots of products around the world that don't have an Irish component of one type or another. Many of our agricultural companies are rooted in the cooperative movement, so they're owned by the farmers themselves. So they take a very long-term view of markets and partnerships. And one of the things the Minister of Agriculture, while he was here, announced was, for example, we are going to support policy and capacity building for some of the agricultural policymakers in Nigeria. He met with his counterpart, we met with the teams. The last point on the services, the big services for us, are the ones that are sitting on your desk in front of you, the ones that you're using here. technology services are the largest component of our exports. So when you make a payment in Nigeria, or when your international payments are validated, when you're sending telecoms and encrypted messages across our devices, much of that is driven by technology services coming from Ireland. So it's like a little invisible export, but it's a very important part of us doing business here every day. And that is an area that is so open for more collaboration. None of these areas we're competing with each other. This is the beauty of it. This is why I'm so excited to be here every day.
That is mutual. Okay.
Mutual.
Okay, just
Yeah.
before I come back to Dr. Floyd, because I'm
Yeah.
looking at our time, we have about 4 minutes to the end. I also do know that, of course, Nigerian students are in Ireland. Talk to me about why Nigerian students are also going to the island. How much is it to study in the island? How much is it to go to the island to study? Vis-a-vis other countries like the US, Canada, the UK, and all of that. You understand what I mean, Your Excellency?
I do,
How
yeah.
competitive is it? Or is it less expensive?
Dr. Flood is better placed than I to
Okay.
tell you about the university
Okay.
fees, so maybe you could ask him on
Okay,
that. But
okay, Dr. Floyd, let me pose that question to you in terms of how much perhaps to study, or what is like to study in Ireland. Is it less expensive than the US, for example, Canada, UK, perhaps Australia? Then let me also add another question there. What model of funding are the universities in Ireland under? I know why I'm asking that, because we have a lot of government, federal government funded. Of course, federal government is in charge of tertiary education in Nigeria, and we've been saying a lot has been going on about the decline in tertiary education in Nigeria, and we're seeing a lot of private sector, individuals, private sector, people getting into the tertiary education. So I would like to know what kind of funding model that is existent in Ireland, and we have about 2 minutes.
Okay, so very briefly, the average cost for 1 year of study in Ireland for, say, a student to come from Nigeria to TU Dublin, between tuition, living expenses, accommodation, is probably in the region of 25 to 30,000 euro. I'm not sure what that converts into in naira. So that's a very rough estimate. There is variability depending on the subject and things like that. So at the very high end would be areas of medicine where the tuition could be up to 50 or 60,000 euro per year, plus living expenses on top of that. In terms of the funding model, all universities in Ireland are publicly funded,
Okay.
and that affords certain huge amount of protection. There are private colleges, but it gives the students a huge amount of protection in terms of the quality of the delivery, etc. Just looking at the point about the cost, which is obviously very, very significant for somebody, I think people need to look at that in the context of an investment in their son, their daughter, or themselves,
Okay.
for their future. And I would take the example of a lady who studied in TU Dublin in what was then the 1940s, a lady called Margaret Ekpo. She completed her studies in TU Dublin when her husband was studying here, and she went back and she set up the Domestic Science and Sewing Institute in ABBA,
Okay.
I believe, in Calabar.
Okay.
So she took her knowledge, she brought it back home, and she localized
Yeah.
it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Floyd. I think we have to leave it at that. We really have to go now. It's been a very good conversation with you both, and Your Excellency. Thank you very much. I must acknowledge you publicly. You brought this gift for me, the Black and Irish book. And most importantly, you said this kilishi was made in Ireland.
this is made by Mama Shi, one of our most beloved members of the Nigerian community in Ireland, and a real example of the dynamism that the Nigerians are bringing to our little island too, in our little partnership.
Thank you very much. What's your favorite food since you've been here?
Well, it has to be kilishi, doesn't it?
All right. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I've been speaking with His Excellency Peter Ryan, Ambassador of Ireland to Nigeria, designates to Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, Togo, and ECOWAS, as well as Dr. Robert Floyd, Head International Engagement, Technological University of Dublin. He joined us from Dublin this morning. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us also.
Thank you, Nancy.